What would you do if the only people you thought would save you were already on a plane to a luxury resort while you were running from your abusive husband? But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. At exactly 1:12 a.m., Emily Carter, 32, sat in her car with the engine still running outside her parents' house. Her hands were shaking so badly she had to hold the steering wheel just to keep them from trembling in the air. One suitcase. One overnight bag. No real plan. Just escape. 47 minutes earlier, her husband Ryan Carter, 35, had slammed her phone into the kitchen wall so hard it shattered into 3 pieces across the floor. The argument wasn't even about anything dramatic. It was about how long she took at the grocery store. 38 minutes. He said it should have taken 20. And when she laughed, not because it was funny, but because she didn't know what else to do. His expression changed into something she'd only started seeing in the last year. Something colder. Something that made the air in the room feel tight. So she left. No screaming. No big announcement. She waited until he fell asleep on the couch, packed one bag in the dark, grabbed her car keys, and drove to the one place she thought would always be safe. Home. But when she pressed the intercom at her parents' gate, instead of hearing footsteps rushing toward the door, she heard her mother, Linda Parker, 58, sigh. Not concern. Not panic. Annoyance. "Emily, we're already boarding," Linda said. "You can't just show up like this. You're overreacting again. We talked about this. You need to stop seeking attention every time you and Ryan argue." While Emily was standing outside with a bruise forming under her sleeve, her parents and her younger brother Daniel Parker, 28, were boarding a flight to a luxury beach resort they'd booked months ago. And they weren't about to cancel it. That night, Emily slept in her car. 2 days later, she filed for a restraining order. 2 weeks later, someone knocked on her door. And the person standing there knew something about Ryan that Emily didn't. Who plans their escape from their own marriage while pretending everything is fine? Because that's exactly what Emily had been doing for months. Smiling at dinner. Laughing when Ryan made jokes in public. Posting anniversary photos that said things like, "Forever grateful for this man," while secretly memorizing the sound of his footsteps in the hallway so she'd know what mood he was in before he even spoke. Ryan didn't start out abusive. He started out attentive. He remembered how she liked her coffee, walked her to her car after work, texted her when she got home just to make sure she was safe. But slowly, those "just checking on you" texts became, "Why didn't you answer me immediately?" Then it became, "Why were you offline for 12 minutes?" Then it became, "Send me a photo so I know where you are." Protective became possessive. Possessive became controlling. And controlling became isolating. By their 3rd year of marriage, Ryan had her phone location permanently shared with him. He said it was for emergencies. By year 4, he started timing how long it took her to run errands. If the grocery trip took longer than expected, he'd ask for receipts. If she got stuck in traffic, he'd ask why she didn't leave earlier. If she visited a friend, he'd ask why she needed them when she had him. And somehow, it always ended with her apologizing. Have you ever apologized just to make the tension stop? Then came the money. Ryan moved their joint savings into a new account to help us budget better. Emily's name wasn't on it. He canceled her credit card after she bought lunch with a coworker without telling him first. And every time she tried to push back, he'd laugh. "You're too emotional to understand finances." But the night she left wasn't about money. It was about a shattered plate hitting the wall inches from her head. It was about the way Ryan stood too close after, lowering his voice just enough to make her feel small. "No one else would ever deal with you," he whispered. So she waited, packed one bag, and drove to her parents' house. But when Linda told her they were boarding their flight, Emily realized something terrifying. She didn't just leave her husband. She left her only backup plan. So she locked the car doors from the inside and tried to sleep. Sleeping in your car isn't the hardest part. Waking up is. Because for a few seconds, before your brain catches up, you forget where you are. You stretch. You blink. You think you're safe. And then you see the fog on the inside of the windshield. You feel the ache in your neck from sleeping upright. And you remember, you're alone in a parking lot with nowhere to go. At 6:43 a.m., Emily woke up freezing in the front seat outside a 24-hour pharmacy she'd parked behind sometime around 3 a.m. Her phone battery was down to 11%. 3 missed calls. All from Ryan. 1 voicemail. Not apologizing. Not asking if she was okay. But calmly telling her that if she didn't come home by noon, he'd be reporting her car as stolen since it was technically registered under his name. That's when something shifted. This wasn't about fixing anything. Ryan wasn't trying to get her back. He was trying to corner her. So Emily drove straight to the courthouse the moment it opened at 8:30. Still wearing yesterday's sweater. Still smelling faintly like his cologne from when he grabbed her arm the night before. No lawyer. No savings. No idea what she was doing. Filing for a restraining order meant writing everything down. Every insult she laughed off. Every time he blocked the doorway during an argument. Every shove she told herself didn't count because he didn't technically hit her. Have you ever minimized something just so you wouldn't have to deal with how bad it really was? But halfway through the paperwork, her hand started shaking because she realized something no one tells you about leaving. If the judge said no, she'd have to go back. And Ryan knew exactly where her parents lived. Then her phone buzzed again. A message from her younger brother Daniel. Not asking if she was safe, but asking if she could please stop calling Mom because she was ruining the vacation vibe. Emily stared at the message for a long time. Then she pressed submit anyway. But she had no idea. Ryan had already made a move of his own. 2 weeks after cutting off your husband and your entire family. Who do you expect to show up at your door? A lawyer? Your parents finally feeling guilty? Ryan breaking the restraining order? At 8:17 p.m., there was a knock. Soft. Controlled. Not aggressive. Emily froze. She had been staying in a short-term rental arranged through a local women's shelter program. It wasn't fancy. Beige walls. Thin curtains. A couch that sagged in the middle. But it was quiet. For the first time in years, she had slept without bracing for footsteps in the hallway. The temporary restraining order had been granted. Ryan wasn't allowed within 100 meters of her. At least on paper. The knock came again. Knock. Knock. Not loud, but deliberate. Emily moved slowly toward the door, her heart hammering so hard she could hear it in her ears. She didn't turn on the porch light. She didn't speak. She looked through the peephole. A woman stood there. Mid-40s. Brown hair pulled back. No makeup. Holding a thick folder against her chest like it was armor. Not Ryan. Not her parents. The woman leaned closer to the door and spoke quietly. My name is Melissa Grant. I was married to Ryan before you. Everything inside Emily went still. Married. Before you. Ryan had told her he'd never been married. Said he almost proposed once in his 20s, but it didn't work out because the woman was unstable. Melissa swallowed hard when Emily cracked the door open just an inch. I found your name in the court records, she said. When I saw the restraining order filing, I knew it was him. Emily felt her stomach drop. Because Melissa wasn't angry. She was calm. And calm people with folders don't show up unless they have proof. Melissa opened the folder just enough for Emily to see a document. A restraining order. Filed 3 years ago. By her. But what Melissa said next made Emily's throat tighten. He doesn't just control you, she whispered. He tracks you. And according to Melissa, there might still be something attached to Emily's car. Emily's hands trembled as she grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen drawer. She didn't know what she expected to find under her car, but Melissa had been serious. Ryan's past wasn't just a warning, it was a blueprint. Shining the light under the rear bumper, Emily froze. There it was. A small black GPS tracker, taped neatly under the metal like a silent, invisible hand following her every move. Suddenly, all the coincidences made sense. The way Ryan appeared at her office, the suspicious cars trailing her in parking lots, the constant calls checking her location. He hadn't been guessing. He had been tracking. Tears stung her eyes, but this time they were not of fear, They were of relief. She had left in time. She had filed the restraining order. And now she knew, with absolute certainty, that she wasn't crazy. She wasn't overreacting. Over the next 2 months, Emily's life began to reclaim itself. The temporary restraining order became permanent. She changed her number, closed the joint bank account Ryan had set up. She cut ties with anyone who told her that abuse was just a rough patch or that she was being dramatic. When her parents finally called, their voices full of fake concern after returning from their resort, Emily didn't answer. Because the same people who had left her to sleep in a car, who had ignored her fear and pain, didn't deserve a conversation. She realized that sometimes the hardest thing isn't leaving an abuser, it's leaving the people who promised to protect you and didn't. Remember the opening question? What would you do if the only people who were supposed to save you chose comfort over your safety? Emily's answer wasn't heroic in a conventional sense. It was survival. Sleeping in a car. Filling out court paperwork alone. Facing an unexpected visitor who proved that the abuse was real. It was messy, scary, and completely necessary. Emily finally felt a quiet strength she hadn't known existed. The knock on the door that night had been terrifying, but it had also been liberating. It confirmed that truth exists, even if the people closest to you refuse to see it. If you've ever been told you were overreacting when something felt wrong, listen to yourself anyway. Trust your instincts. Take action. And if this story resonates, subscribe, because sometimes the scariest knock on the door is the one that finally sets you free.